peeps. Say hi. Furball. Welcome to Forensic Friday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Today's video will be featuring the Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay. All the other products I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I am not a professional forensic pathologist, nor am I a professional makeup artist. I'm just the average girl at home like you, playing in my makeup while I talk about a true crime case. So if that's something you're into, then you are more than welcome to stick around and hit the subscribe button. Also, quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't f it up. Now let's get into today's case. We're back to the Cheeto Puff Ball. Please ignore. This story all takes place in the summer of 2006 in McKinney, Texas. A young couple went to view a sample home in a very affluent neighborhood. Rich people shit. Now the name of this neighborhood was called Crave's Ranch. What an interesting name for a neighborhood. Now, upon arriving to the model home, everything looked good from the outside. However, when the couple went inside the home, it became clear that something was not right. For starters, they were unable to find the agent that was supposed to be showing them the home. And they called out a few times, but no one answered, so they decided to just, do a walkthrough on their own. Perhaps the agent stepped out, maybe she was in one of the other rooms, didn't hear them. They weren't sure, but they knew that something wasn't right, although there was another car parked outside that they assumed was the agent's car. There was furniture moved around and tossed about. There was a plant thrown against the wall and fell down onto the floor. It was a mess. The couple is thinking, wow, what the hell's going on in here? Although it was clear that something was terribly off with this model home, the couple decided to explore the home anyway. In the living room, they found a blood trail leading into the kitchen. And although they saw all of that, that did not stop the couple's curiosity. And they followed the trail into the kitchen. I mean, they better than me, because I'd have walked right up out of there. I'd have been like, nope, we gotta go, we gotta call the police, we don't need to see, that's enough, that's enough. The Scooby-Doo running cartoon sound, that would have been me. Because there's no way, babe, that I would have followed that trail into the kitchen. I'd have been like, no, thank you, ma'am. Even though they were scared, I'm sure they were also very curious, and so they did go into the kitchen. There in the kitchen, lying on the floor, they found the lifeless body of a blonde woman laying in a pool of blood. Now, this was enough. Finally, this was enough for them to get the heck out of there and call the police. Okay, I don't know why people be waiting around. I don't be waiting around. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? Seriously, are we waiting for the killer to come back and get us? Like, what are we waiting for? When investigators arrived on the scene, they were immediately able to identify the victim as 40-year-old Sarah Walker, the real estate agent that was supposed to be doing the showing that day. There was so much blood at the crime scene that investigators described it as overkill. This foundation is the most full coverage, flawless foundation I have ever found in my entire life, and it literally was $5 on Amazon. There was no sign of forced entry, which makes sense. It was a model home. Those are usually open to the public. If an agent is there, the doors are most usually unlocked. I mean, some showings you have to have an appointment, but I know times when an agent will show a home and they'll have multiple customers coming to view the home. So they'll be there for between a certain hour, and then anybody that wants to view the home can just show up. But nowadays, I don't know, here in LA, if you want to view an apartment or something, they just give you a code. They text you a code and you're just able to go in and view it by yourself. The agents don't be wasting their time coming out no more. Sarah was a beautiful, vivacious mother of 2. She had been recently divorced, but doing quite well for herself. She had a very successful career at the real estate company that she currently worked for. Everyone loved Sarah. She was such an energetic, exciting person. There was never a dull moment around her. In addition to Sarah's personality, she was also very physically attractive. She was always well kept and put together. Being recently divorced, she put a little bit more effort into her appearance. Sarah had it going on, okay? She definitely knew how to turn heads. She was even put in one of the company's commercials because she had such a bubbly personality and she was so beautiful. So she did great on camera. The camera loved her. Based on the nature of the crime scene, investigators determined that Sarah most likely had been killed in the living room before being drugged into the kitchen, where her body was ultimately discovered by the couple. There were signs that there had been a vicious struggle in the living room that left it in utter disarray. In the kitchen, crime scene investigators found circular drops of blood on the tile floor. There were hair follicles in the sink and blood droplets in and around the sink. The back door deadbolt had been locked and the blinds were shut. There were also small traces of blood on the back door itself. Investigators collected the blood evidence and sent it to the forensics lab for testing. Now, I want to say those blood droplets actually were like additional droplets that weren't a part of where Sarah's body was found, because her body was found in this huge pool of blood. Oh! Who are you? Sorry guys, a little ant was crawling up here. That scared me. I hate ants and I don't know how it got inside. We're in the middle of winter. I'm not down with that though. Forensic scientists performed a DNA test on the blood. The results came back and the blood droplets did not match the blood from Sarah Walker. So if it wasn't Sarah's blood, whose was it? Could this be the blood of the killer? Blood spatter experts were able to determine that the perfectly circular drops of blood came from an above angle of 90 degrees. That's how these perfectly shaped circles are formed. This was a huge indicator to police that the attacker had maybe cut himself. An autopsy was performed on Sarah's body and she had multiple stab wounds. She had a lot of tissue trauma. She had bruising on her skin. She had various wounds to her upper torso and back of her head. I mean, it was a very, very vicious attack. Medical examiners also performed a kit on her, but there was no signs of assault. However, they did find something that they thought was very bizarre. They found a bite mark on her neck. Listen, we don't know what Sarah was doing before everything she got into. We don't know. It could be innocent. It could just be a love mark, like a love bite. Well, some people are into biting people. I don't know who, because that's very, very, listen. We're not gonna go into it. The freshness of the bite mark left on Sarah's neck led investigators to believe that this probably happened sometime during the struggle with the perpetrator, that the perp had actually bit her on the neck. But who would want Sarah dead and why? To find out, investigators took a closer look into Sarah's background, starting with the people closest to her. They wanted to find out if there was anyone in her personal life who might want her dead. So of course, they started with the most obvious suspect, Sarah's ex-husband. Now, Sarah had been recently divorced from her second ex-husband, Randy Tate. Now, Sarah's family never liked Randy from the beginning, and when they got a divorce, this just caused a huge disconnect between the families even more. They could care less for Randy. They didn't care that she wasn't with him anymore. They really did not like him at all for what he had done. Now, apparently, Sarah did not want the divorce. She wanted to work things out, but Randy was adamant about the divorce. He no longer wanted to be with her and he wanted to go and live his own life. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of animosity between Sarah and Randy because Randy had initiated this divorce that Sarah did not want. And Randy was the last known person to see Sarah alive. Now, he told police that Sarah had dropped their son off with him before heading out to work earlier that morning. He claimed that he had nothing to do with his late wife's death and that he had an alibi. That afternoon, he had been with his buddies playing golf, which police did look into and was able to corroborate his story. Initially, Randy was being fully cooperative with investigators until they asked him for his DNA. This is when he got a little awkward and he got nervous, and he was like, actually, I'm gonna put a hold on that. I'm gonna get a lawyer. So at this point, he lawyered up and he wasn't being as cooperative as he was at first. Although he did refuse to give his DNA, he eventually gave in and did give it to investigators. Usually people will volunteer to give it, but if a suspect does not volunteer to give their DNA, you have to go through a whole procedure. You have to get a warrant to take the DNA from their body, like a court order or something like that. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a professional. I'll leave that to the professionals in the comments. So after obtaining Randy's DNA, they sent it to the forensics lab for testing. The results came back and his DNA did not match the blood found at the crime scene, and he was eliminated as a suspect. With further investigation, police discovered that Sarah had been on a number of dating sites as she was newly single, so she was, she was doing her thing, she was mingling. Investigators started to wonder if the perpetrator could have been one of the guys that Sarah had been talking to on the dating site. One particular site that Sarah was talking to men on was called Millionaire Matchmaker. Is that site still around? Because girl, your girl needs some help over here. Just kidding. I just turned down one actually. I don't know why I said that. As they were going through Sarah's dating profile, it became evident that Sarah actually didn't really go on many dates with these men. It was kind of just a hi, hello, I'm interested, I'm not interested. It was more of a chat. But most of the guys that reached out to her, she actually told them that she wasn't interested and hardly ever really went on dates from the site. So that was one thing. But Sarah was a very attractive woman, and when you're a very attractive woman and you put your photos on the internet, you can get some real creeps, okay? That's just to be honest. Whether you're interested in them or not, doesn't matter. The fact that your photo is out there on the internet, anybody can see it, anybody can find you. This is 2006, so we're talking about the beginning of social media, like the development of it. Social media was just a little baby that was starting to develop. It wasn't the massive thing you see today. Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. Oh, I also forgot to tell you guys, I've already created one look with this palette. If you want to see the first look I created with this palette, I'll leave it linked on the screen right here. So with this, investigators start to theorize that perhaps Sarah got a stalker from this site. They interviewed every man that Sarah had spoken with and gave them all DNA tests. But when the tests came back, they were all negative. None of the tests from the men matched the DNA found at the crime scene. Y'all, I know, I need some new brushes. With no new leads, Sarah's case was growing cold until several weeks later when a man named Nelson came forward with some interesting information. He told investigators that on the morning of the murder, his wife, who was also a realtor, had gotten a call from a man who called himself Chan Lee. The man wanted to view the home that she was showing, which was located across the street from the house that Sarah Walker was killed in. Now, while speaking with the guy, Nelson's wife really did not trust this guy. It was just something about him during their conversation that she felt like, she just wasn't really taking him seriously. So to confirm their appointment, she did call the hotel that the man had told her he was staying in. But something very weird happened when she called. The front desk told her that there wasn't any Chanleys registered at the hotel during that time at all. After that, she was really skeptical about this guy. Why would someone need to lie about the hotel that they're staying in? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, not only were you not in the room that you said you were going to be in, but you also aren't even registered at that hotel. I mean, despite all of this, she still agrees to meet with him the following day. Now, realtors make commission off of the homes they sell, so it's really important for them to make those sales. And that's one of the reasons why, although she felt skeptical, she still went through with it, because, you know, who knows, maybe he was serious and she would get a possible sale. Like, she just didn't want to take the chance. But she asked her husband Nelson to come with her because she didn't feel comfortable and she wasn't sure if the guy was legit. When they arrived and parked outside, a guy in a white Mustang pulls up and he gets out. And he is Asian, he's wearing shorts and a muscle tank. Nelson sees the guy, and because, you know, he did introduce himself over the phone as a Chan Lee, which that in and of itself gives me red flags. Chan Lee sounds like he took a Street Fighter video game character and turned it into a male version, if you know who I'm talking about. If you know, you know. At this point, they're still sitting in their car, but they see the guy, and so they see him walking towards the model home. Nelson asks the guy, "Excuse me, are you Chan Lee?" And the guy just like looks away and kind of ignores him and looks up at the sky. He didn't answer Nelson, but he just like shook his head, kind of like, no, like, you know, like, no, like he didn't want to be bothered, basically. Like, kind of like the "you got the wrong person, don't bother me" kind of, you know, head shake. So they were thinking, oh, well, that's probably not our guy then. So they go into the townhome to wait for their customer, and while they're inside, Nelson is looking out the window across the street. That is when he sees Sarah arriving to the model home. And he never met Sarah or seen Sarah before, so he was quite taken back by Sarah. Nelson was so smitten by Sarah that he called out to his wife to come and take a look. He said that you have to see this. There's this striking blonde woman getting out of a sports car and going into the model home across the street. To which his wife replied, "Oh yeah, that's Sarah. She's another realtor, you know?" He then replies with, "Oh, well, Sarah is looking really good today." I mean, this guy. And she's like, "Well, yeah." After waiting for some time, the couple decide that most likely their customer is not coming, it's a no-show, and they decide to leave. So they pack their things up and they are walking back to their car. As they're walking back to their car, they notice that same white Mustang that they saw earlier parked next to Sarah's vehicle outside of the model home across the street. So Nelson suggests to his wife that they go and say hi to Sarah. Nelson is a pimp, man. Nelson is a straight up G. But they ultimately decide not to go and say hi to Sarah because his wife tells him that she's hungry and she just wants to leave. Like, ain't nobody got time to sit and watch you flirt all day with other ladies. You do that on your own time, dude. So they leave, and thank God they did, because they could have very well been, you know, murdered too, who knows? Or maybe not, maybe they would have been able to stop him, I don't know. Now, this all happened around 1 p.m. that day, and Sarah's body was discovered about a half an hour later. Finally, investigators had a possible suspect. With further investigation, they discovered that Sarah had gone to the bank earlier on that day. So they wanted to pull the footage from the bank's security surveillance so they could see if there was anything that would also give them any new clues as to what could have taken place. When they reviewed the security surveillance footage from the bank, it showed Sarah making a deposit. Authorities noticed that she was wearing an expensive watch and an expensive ring. However, none of those items were found on her body or at the crime scene. So what happened during the time that Sarah was at the bank making the deposits and the time that she had actually showed up at the home? Investigators started to theorize that whoever the attacker was had also stolen these items off of her, and perhaps it was like a robbery gone wrong. One thing was for sure, police needed to speak to the man that Nelson had seen that day. But Nelson had only seen him for a brief moment and couldn't really remember the guy's facial features that well. So investigators brought in a forensic hypnotist. Wow, that's kind of cool. According to the forensic hypnotist, the purpose of forensic hypnosis is to bring up detailed memories from the subconscious mind. Now, allegedly in Texas, they have a 75% success rate using forensic hypnosis. Am I the only one like mind blown by this, that they are even using hypnosis to solve crimes? This is crazy. It is said that you can find forensic hypnosis dating back to the early 1800s. That is wild. Like, who knew? In the session, the forensic hypnotist had Nelson recall that day and time, and he asked him to pretend like he was watching that day as though it was a movie, so from like a third-party perspective. So Nelson goes through the motions and he is telling the hypnotist everything that he is seeing. When Nelson gets to the part where the man is getting out of his vehicle, the hypnotist asks him to freeze frame that shot in his mind. So he asked Nelson to describe all the details and characteristics of the man's face, everything he could remember. He tells Nelson to pretend like he is looking from all different sides and for Nelson to detail what he could see. As he begins to tell police what he sees, he describes an Asian man approximately 27 years old, around 5'7" with a buzz cut. After the session, he was asked to look through a book that had a bunch of different faces in it and to choose the features that best fit the mystery man. The investigators gave the information they received from Nelson to a sketch artist, who then drew up a composite. And right before their eyes emerged an image of their suspect. They then sent the image and the information to news outlets, news channels, the newspaper, radios, all type of different media forums to get the word out there that they were looking for this guy. The photo was posted to TV shows like America's Most Wanted. They were hoping that someone would come forward and recognize the person in the photo, possibly give them some new information that they could go off of. And instantly after posting the photo, they got a hit. Another real estate agent came forward and said that she had rented a place to a guy that fit that description. 25-year-old Kasul Chatakaman. According to her, shortly after she rented a place to him, he had come over to her home in the middle of the night and asked to use the phone. When she said no and refused to let him inside, he got really irate and started to get angry at her. So she just like closed the front door in his face because she already said no, and at this point it's the middle of the night and she was scared. So he was so upset that she wouldn't let him inside that he ran around to the back door of her home and started banging on the back door. At this point, she's super freaked out. Her dogs are barking and this guy is like banging on her door like a psychopath. She ended up calling the police out and making a report on him. Now, Kasul was a Laotian American. His parents were from Laos, but he was born here in the US. He worked as a truck driver. He had a pretty lengthy criminal background that involved a lot of violence dating back to his teens. When he was just 15, he assaulted another classmate and was sent to juvenile detention. Later that same year, he got out and he stole a car. After he served time for that offense, he robbed 2 elderly women and kidnapped them. This man's life sounds like Grand Theft Auto. I mean, it is like he just thought he was in a GTA video game. He was released on parole for that crime 6 months before Sarah's death. Now, investigators spoke with Kasul's sister, who he had been living with at the time. According to her, he moved in with her after he got out of prison so that he could get his life back together. She was trying to help him get back on track and get his life back together so that, he could be a better person, but he just really wasn't at all. I mean, sometimes you think you can help people and make them better, but you really can't. They're just not gonna be a better person. They don't want to be a better person. They're not gonna be a better person, and there's really nothing you can do about it. With this new information, police got a warrant and he was arrested on suspicion of murder. When police interrogated him, he denied having any involvement in Sarah's murder and implied that investigators were trying to trick or coerce him into some sort of confession that wasn't true. But the police were not intimidated by his accusations, and they did not fall for his little tricks. They continued to put the heat on him. Once they finished the interrogation, they then took Kasul aside and they took photos of his body, trying to see if they could find any additional evidence maybe. And one thing that really stood out to investigators was that on the outside of Kasul's left hand, they found scars that were indicative of some sort of knife fight, or like he had slices on the outside of his left hand. There were slices going every which way. They also took photos of Kasul's teeth. They were thinking they could get some sort of impression of his teeth. They would be able to compare it to the bite mark that they found on Sarah's neck. Once they had taken photos of his teeth, a forensic odontologist took dental impressions. They were able to compare the dental impressions to the bite mark on Sarah's neck. Meanwhile, investigators were able to obtain Kasul's cell phone and found some rather disturbing images. There were images of him biting different things, and there were also other images and searches in his phone about biting. It was clear that Kasul had an obsession with biting. He even had an image on his home screen of him biting, or pretending to bite, I should say. He was pretending to bite his little puppy. That's just too much. That's too much. It's too much. Okay, again with the biting. Why y'all out here biting people? We done took it this far now. We done went to the damn animals. Now you biting animals. I'm done. I'm done. Okay, I am officially done. Investigators were convinced that this was their guy. Prosecutors really wanted to nail him. So forensic scientists compared the blood droplets found in the kitchen at the crime scene to Kasul's DNA. And what do you know? They matched. Kasul Chantikama was in fact the killer. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, in October of 2006, Kasul Chantikama was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. What did you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out my other videos. I'll leave them linked here on the screen. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time with another true crime story time. Bye.